will be peace in the valley for me someday. There will be peace in the valley for me, oh Lord, I pray. There'll be no sadness, no sorrow, oh my Lord, no trouble I see. There will be peace in the valley for me, for me. Well, the bear will be gentle. There will be peace in the valley for me someday. There will be peace in the valley for me, oh Lord, I pray. There'll be no sadness, no sorrow, oh my Lord, no trouble I see. There will be peace in the valley for me, for me. Well, the bear will be gentle. There will be peace in the valley for me someday. There will be peace in the valley for me, oh Lord, I pray. There'll be no sad.
Welcome, everyone. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hey everyone. So good evening. My name is John, and I want to welcome all of you to our monthly webinar series here at Cloud. It's our pleasure to have Dean Westbrook, Senior Director of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, with us today to share about the importance of communication. I know I'm looking forward to learning what I can today. So before we begin today's program, I want to remind you that when our speaker is presenting, please turn off your video and mute your microphones. If you have any questions during the presentation, you can type them into the chat. If your question is confidential, you can send it to either me or Star or one of the other mentors directly. And now during the QA session, we'll also invite participants to unmute. And if you'd like to ask a question there, just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll call on you. We'll call on you and then you can speak. And we appreciate the cooperation. So today's agenda is as follows. We're going to have a presentation from Dean, as mentioned, right? There's going to be a 15-minute or so QA. If we have a little extra time, we'll go a little longer than that. And then we're going to go ahead and open up for the EMBA breakout rooms for discussions and so that you can ask questions, not just about today's content, but also about at Cloud Marketplace Ministry and what EMBA is. Without further ado, let's ask Michael to give us an opening prayer.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for gathering us here today for this communication workshop. And we are so grateful for the opportunities to learn and grow together. And Lord, we ask that you bless this time, open our hearts and minds to receive new insights. We bless our speaker, Dean. May today's session be filled with your presence and wisdom. And we commit this workshop into your hands. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. So let's all give Dean a warm welcome. So he is a bold and results-driven IT leader with more than 2 decades of success spanning sales, service, and operations. Mr. Westbrook will be speaking on how communication shapes your career journey, a massively important topic. Dean?
Thank you very much, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. First of all, I want to start by saying thank you to Star and thank you to the @Cloud Marketplace Ministry for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. I want to make sure I'm sharing my slides and let's get into this. So, hello, welcome to this keynote, From Challenges to Clarity. We'll talk about how communication can unlock your career success. I'm thrilled to be here with you. I hope that you all get a lot of value from what I'm going to share tonight. We'll be talking about leadership, communication, and succeeding in whatever your chosen career may be. So there are three things that I would like you to be able to take away tonight. First of all, why communication skills give you such a big advantage in this very tough job environment that we're living through right now. Secondly, I have three principles for communications and career success in general that I'm excited to share with you. And finally, some practical steps, how you can improve. And I'm going to give you 5 key resources that you can start to use immediately to improve. All right, let's begin with a quick introduction to who I am. As John described, my name is Dean Westbrook. I'm an executive in the technology industry. I'm also a father of 2 young boys. I'm a husband. And earlier this year, I joined Toastmasters because I'm working on my own communication skills. I am actually originally from the UK. You may have guessed that from my accent. I now live here in Ithaca in New York. Just a quick snapshot of what Hewlett Packard is if you don't know. HP was really one of the founding companies of California's Silicon Valley. Back in the late 1930s, HPE builds IT hardware and software on a global basis, about $30 billion of annual revenue. We have 61,000 employees and currently headquartered in Houston, Texas. I'm going to talk about my career in a few minutes, but just to say I'm a senior director. I'm in the compute and artificial intelligence business units. With responsibility right now for product engineering, business analytics, and project management. So that's a little bit about me. Now, I thought it might be interesting to start with just a few stats about where we are at right now at this point in 2025 in the technology industry, because it's a very interesting, challenging, but exciting time. So as many of you know, hiring is pretty soft in the tech industry. Job postings down roughly 9% month on month. Many technology companies, we see this in the news, are cautious, freezing hiring despite stable unemployment rates overall. So the tech industry itself is struggling in an employment sense versus the rest of the economy. Artificial intelligence roles obviously dominate. So around 43% of tech jobs right now, in the advertisements, they will require AI or machine learning skills. So data science, cloud, Gen AI are very high growth areas. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. But layoffs are still happening. Some of the big tech firms are trimming, restructuring, and therefore demand is pretty uneven across roles and locations. And the skills mismatch we're seeing is very real. So many job seekers, though they need advanced AI skills or systems level skills that companies want, they just don't have them, or they certainly don't have the right level of confidence in those skills. So the upskilling that's needed is really critical at this point. And lastly, we're seeing a growth in contract roles. So firms are increasingly using freelancers or short-term contract over full-time hires to stay agile. That may be great for the firms. It may be not so great for us as individuals and employees. So I wanted to set the scene about the tech industry. And now let me bring it to myself, to my own career in the tech industry. And I hope you find some of this interesting, because I definitely have not had what you would call a linear or maybe even a traditional path of growth. In some ways, to be honest, I'm really glad that I started my tech career back in 1999. It was also a challenging time back then, but quite different to the situation that we're in right now in the tech industry. Back then, there were definitely more jobs around, but actually organizations, especially companies like HP, the more traditional, or we could call them dinosaur tech companies, were struggling to stay relevant. They felt kind of bloated and slow. And my career, as I said, has not been a linear path, but I've been at the same company now for just over 25 years. And in that space of time, I think I've moved through pretty much every major department and organization in the company at one time or another. I've done many, many different roles. I would say overall, I've had a very fulfilling career, and it's not over yet, by the way. But I won't lie, the technology industry and actually corporate America in general has been a very challenging environment to be in at times. You need to make a lot of sacrifices. Hard work is absolutely required. Taking chances, being bold, and working through many frustrations and setbacks along the way. I would actually say that surviving this long in one tech company is an achievement in itself, but I'm going to share some of the stumbles and frustrations that I've had along the way. So let me go through this quickly. Back in 1999, I joined HP on a contract basis, actually. I left high school at 16 with just a high school diploma. I joined HP on a 6-week contract, and then I was lucky to find a permanent position within the first year or two. I started in sales. I was a sales rep, cold calling customers, asking them if they wanted to buy parts for their PC or their printer. It wasn't very exciting, and it was pretty challenging, and I'll come back to that in a minute or so. Then in 2003, a couple of years later, I switched into a project management role. And then my period between 2005, 2010, I like to call my certification period. This was a time where I think I felt pretty inadequate not having a college degree, but I didn't really want to do night school, and online learning wasn't such a big thing at that point. But I did dive in hard to professional certification. So I became a Lean Six Sigma black belt. I became an Agile Scrum Master. I became a project management professional, and a couple of other things. So I was really intent on building up those technical qualifications. In 2011, I took on a people management role for the first time. And then I went through a couple of international relocations. Remember, I was raised in the UK and I worked for HP in the UK. I then relocated to Houston in Texas in 2019, then moved again here to New York in 2023. And then I was lucky enough to have a couple of bigger promotions, firstly to a director of sales, and then last year to a senior director within the Compute AI business unit. So what I want to do now is talk you through some of the things I've learned on my career journey and some of the principles that I've tried to distill that have helped me survive, first of all, but also climb the ranks and be successful through this tech career that I've had. Now, there are 3 big things that I've learned along the way. There are many things I've learned, but these are the 3 big ones. The first one is I think we have to be honest with ourselves. If we want to grow and if we want to do better, honesty and self-reflection is incredibly important, but it's not easy to do. For me personally, I found in the first couple years at HP, I was not a natural communicator. So any communication ability that I have right now did not come naturally or easily to me. I was pretty shy, very nervous, and introverted. And my speech, especially in front of customers, was very clumsy. And I'll talk about that. The second thing is never say never. In a career, it's a lifelong journey. And as an example, back in 2001, I mentioned I'd started in sales. When I left sales, I swore I would never go back. It just wasn't for me for a variety of reasons. But lo and behold, 22 years later, a sales position came up that I went for, and it was probably the best thing I ever did. As a role that I loved. So never say never. And the last thing is that pain helps us grow. And in fact, I think the more challenging the situation, the more we can learn that's really meaningful. When we get comfortable and when we're having fun, it's wonderful, of course, but it also begets complacency. It doesn't necessarily help us grow. So putting ourselves into challenging situations and dealing with more complex problems, that can be the catalyst for change that we need. Now, as I mentioned, my career wasn't a linear path. And along the way, I've tried to figure out the principles that have helped me overcome some of the challenges that I've had. And I put them together here as 3 principles stitched together with communication as a core capability. So starting with clarity. Clarity is the foundation for me. Being able to speak clearly or to write clearly and to communicate clearly comes from the ability to think clearly. And I'm going to talk about that in a second here. As we build more clarity, we can develop our character. We want to aim, ideally, to have a balance of warmth or likability and strength or competency. And then confidence, to me, is the top of the pyramid. True confidence comes from that strength of clarity and that development of character. We can then be humble, but don't let the humility beat our ability. And as I said before, communication goes across all of those 3 principles. And what I want to do now is talk through those principles one by one. I'm also going to give you some examples of my own career from a personal point of view to punctuate the story. So let me start here. Change is painful. So imagine this. I was early in my career at HP, and remember, I didn't go to college, so I went straight from high school into work. So I was pretty young at this point. I was actually in my late teens. I'd been at the company for about a year. I was a sales rep. As I said, selling spare parts for computers, not very exciting, and I was really struggling. I was a sales rep who had missed his number, his target, 3 quarters or 9 months in a row. And for any of you who know anything about sales, missing your number for that long is practically a death sentence. Now, I was very enthusiastic. I was incredibly hardworking. I researched my customers. I understood my products, the technical side of my products, inside out. Preparation was my skill, but communication was not good. And in fact, at those critical moments when I was in front of a customer pitching or explaining the features of a product, I pretty much crumbled. I look back on it now, all these years later, and it's kind of hard for me to imagine how bad it was. But I was an abysmal communicator, that's the truth. I stumbled, stammered, and I struggled through every sales pitch. And as a result of that, missing my targets, but also being so uncomfortable all the time, I was, of course, pretty miserable in that role. The dreaded performance review came around with my manager. My manager was a straight shooter, a wonderful guy, very, very direct. I remember him now looking straight at me, looking me in the eye and saying, "Hey, Dean, we really like you, but you are not good at sales. You're never going to make it. What do you want to do?" Now, again, I look back with the benefit of hindsight. I was very lucky. I wonder if today in this current environment, whether I would have been given a second chance or given the option to do something different. But I was lucky. The company offered me something else, and I moved from a sales role to project management. And as soon as I did that, everything improved, but my communication still wasn't great. Okay, I didn't have to go back in front of customers and have the stress and the pressure of that. But I still, as a project manager, had to lead meetings. I had to get people organized. I had to set direction. And my communication skills were still holding me back. Now, one thing I would recommend, if you don't have one, seek out an honest mentor. a mentor or a coach that perhaps is a little on the abrasive side, who's not prepared to tell you exactly like it is, somebody that you trust. When you hear that kind of feedback, as I heard all those years ago, it was painful. I was devastated, and I basically thought my career was over. But they opened another door for me. They gave me another opportunity, but I knew I had to repay that opportunity by addressing what was so bad in my communication. So let's talk through that now. So our principle number one, to speak clearly, we need to think clearly. This surprises people. We tend to think of something that we're not good at requires practice. If I can't speak well, then I need to practice speaking more until I get better. Please don't do that. That's not a good idea. Surprisingly, speaking more will not make you better at speaking. If you're not doing it well, and if you're not addressing what's underlying that, you'll actually probably get worse, and that's not what you want. Clear speech reflects clear thought. Muddled words signal muddled ideas. So you might ask then, well, how do I unclutter my thoughts? How do I think more clearly? The key to uncluttered thoughts and logical reasoning is through analytical reading. Not everybody wants to hear this. We don't want to go back to school in this day and age with everything digital, cell phones, smartphones, internet. Don't tend to think about old-fashioned paper books. But I promise you, this is a very powerful method. So writing is the most powerful way to synthesize what you read and to guide your thinking. And I want you to consider it this way. It's not so much about learning a subject. It's about almost rewiring your brain to deal with language in a different way. And when you do this, better speech will come quickly, and the results will compound with more hard work. And the flow is really simple. You read, you write, you think about it, and then speaking follows. There are two great books. Now, these are old books. I think the first one, How to Read a Book, was written back in 1940. But this is a fantastic book if you haven't read this. How to Read a Book by Morton Adler goes through this approach and this technique that is going to yield amazing results for you, I promise. And the other one is Writing to Learn by William Zinsser. This is that second step of once you're reading good material, how do you distill it down, write about it, develop your critical thinking so that your speaking clarifies as you go through. And later on, I'm going to give you all some practical steps for how to actually do this. If you don't want to get hold of the book, I'll distill it down for you and I'll give you the cheat code. Back in 2011, I got my first people management role. Like many people moving into people management, I was thrown in at the deep end. And honestly, I do not think I was ready. However, is anybody ever ready for the next step, truly? We always have that feeling of imposter syndrome. You know, am I really good enough to be able to do this next step in my career? And actually, I took on a very big challenge. It was a team of 50 compute hardware engineers. Now, I am not from an engineering background. So these guys were incredibly skilled at what they did. And I really didn't understand their work at all. But I was suddenly their manager. I was completely out of my comfort zone. The stress, insecurity I was feeling, interestingly, it led me to deal with it in a very aggressive way. I became very dictatorial, aggressive, demanding, kind of like type A. And that's not really me by personality and by nature. So I was acting, I was putting on this very tough dictator type approach when it truly wasn't me. And of course, that made me miserable. Having to put that on every day felt very heavy and unsustainable. And my team, even more importantly, of course, were really not responding well. Work wasn't getting done. people weren't speaking up when there were problems, things were getting hidden because they were all afraid of me, and I don't blame them. I realized if I opened up just a little bit, it was small things like just a bit of small talk instead of straight into work and results and demands, just a little bit of what did you do over the weekend, or how are you feeling about this latest project, or how are the kids doing, whatever it might be. Just a little bit of that opened things up, showing a little bit of flexibility, allowing people just cutting a little bit of slack here and there. As soon as I started to do that, I felt my team responding better, and I felt the pressure starting to come off my shoulders. This point is that I realized I had not developed my charisma or my character. And that leads me to principle number 2. We need to aim to be warm, but also strong. If you're looking to be hired for a new job, be promoted, or just to be respected and followed, your character matters significantly. And good character really develops when we have this balance between warmth or approachability, sociability, trustworthiness, and strength. So how resolute are you, your agency, and your competence? If you are feared by your teams or colleagues, or on the other extreme, if you're always nice, you will not be effective. So it's a spectrum, and we want to aim to be in balance here. Think of it this way: try to aim to be a happy warrior. So you want results, of course. You need to be relentless. You need to be determined and results oriented, but do it with a smile. Let your humanity shine through. And again, I promise that people respond better to that than if you only focus on the strength side. A great book here is Harvard Business Review Press's Emotional Intelligence and Leadership Presence. It's a book I actually have on my desk. I don't know if you can see this right here. It's a small book, but it really distills these characteristics of warm but strong communication, how to speak up in the right way as a leader, how to project confidence in an authentic way. So I really recommend that book. It's a great read. Promotions. Promotions are a big topic. As we get hired into an organization and we start to establish ourselves, naturally, if we're ambitious and we have capabilities, we want to bring them forward, and we want to move, up the ladder, and we want to take on new responsibilities. In 2019, I was promoted to a director level in the company, and that's a big jump. You really move from managing a team of people directly in their day-to-day to now leading a whole organization or a functional area, much bigger scope. Of course, I was really excited about the role, but actually it felt bittersweet for me at that time. And the reason for that is, actually, I think this should have happened for me, not in 2019, but several years earlier. My story is that I've been passed over several times for several years with peers of mine who I don't believe were technically stronger or worked any harder than me, but for various reasons, they got promoted and I didn't. So even though I was grateful and privileged to step up to this next level, as I said, it felt a little bittersweet and it felt a bit overdue for me. And I had to reflect on that. What was happening? My communication skills had improved a bunch by this point, and I felt much more comfortable in my own skin as a person, but also as a leader in my role at the company. So that wasn't the problem anymore, but my technical ability to speak clearly, I'd done a lot of the things I've talked about in principle 1 and 2. But what was happening that other people were getting promoted over me? I'm speaking to a colleague one day, and he just casually said to me, Dean, you work way too hard. And it really surprised me. What a strange thing to say. I mean, this is corporate America. We're competitive. We're aggressive. We're always working 24/7, And yet a friend and a colleague says to me, you're working too hard. What he meant was you're working too hard, you're working too much for the results that you're getting in your career. You are not progressing in your career as much as other people. So that variable of hard work, of course it's important to work hard. You've got to get results. That's number one. But what I was doing wrong was I was way too humble, way too modest for this environment. There's a time and a place for humility, of course. We need to have humility. But if you do too much of that, then you're standing back in the shadows and you're never going to be considered for that next opportunity. Where I'm from in the UK, we would say, don't be afraid to blow your own trumpet. There's a time and a place for it. And I had to learn this, and this made me pretty uncomfortable getting visibility in an organization that's very competitive, where everybody is looking for their own career growth. How do you put yourself forward in a way that's, again, authentic, but not too modest that you don't get considered? You have to be realistic about this. We can pretend it's not true and that our hard work and our results will speak for themselves. But the reality is organizations are highly competitive. You need to manage a really good network of influential people inside and outside your organization and community. And you need to make sure that they know what you're achieving, but more importantly, what you're capable of bringing in terms of value for them and for the organization in the future. So principle 3 is don't let humility beat ability. You do want to project this quiet sense of mature self-confidence. I'm assuming that you've invested your, as Malcolm Gladwell said, 10,000 hours that it takes to master something challenging and worthwhile. So you're technically strong in your discipline. You've, of course, listened to me on principle 1 and 2 and worked really hard to speak better and to balance warmth and strength. But now you need to be careful about being too humble. Humility is a virtue, but it's not a muzzle. It shouldn't stop you from speaking up or pushing yourself forward. There's a great video, and there are many great videos, of course, but the one I'd recommend is Simon Sinek's Guide to Leadership, where he talks about getting that right balance between, again, being humble, but not being so humble that you miss out on opportunities. Now, I promised at the beginning I'd give you some practical steps, not just links to books to go read afterwards. So how do you do all of this stuff that I've talked about here? As a summary, first of all, read more long-form quality nonfiction. And to be clear, that can be on any subject. It doesn't have to be about the industry or the job that you're in or the thing that you're trying to learn. It can be, of course, but it can really be any subject, any worthwhile subject where the material is well written, it's nonfiction. And then as you read, you write about what you read. This is difficult for most people. Many of us have lost the ability to write with a piece of paper and a pen or just a keyboard and just write free form about what you've been reading. What did you comprehend from what you read? Where are there gaps in your knowledge? Ask yourself questions, argue with yourself from different points of view and so forth. That really helps develop your critical thinking. I thought I was a great critical thinker. You know, I'm a leader in my company, working on these technical, complex problems, solving things day after day. When I started to do this practice again, it really surprised me how little I absorbed from what I was reading and how many gaps there were in my knowledge. So this is a great exercise to do. And here's the interesting thing. You will be amazed as your speaking improves. It worked for me. There's nothing special about me, but this works, okay? So it can work for anybody. Reflect honestly on yourself, how you behave, how you show up, and ask other people that you trust, are you too nice? Are you too strong? Are you out of balance? And if you are, you need to work on rebalancing that. There isn't a prescription here, as I said before, but think about it as a blend of characteristics that you want to get to. Prioritizing your network is incredibly important. I mentioned at the very beginning, by nature, I'm somewhat of an introvert. I like to spend time on my own or just with small groups of people, and a shy person, by nature. So building a network of contacts, of people within your organization, within your community, it didn't come naturally to me. I have to push myself sometimes to do that. But opportunities really do come primarily through your network. Applying for roles, especially today online, or traditional ways of seeing job postings and things and applying for things, or if you're in a role, trying to get promoted just based on what you've been doing. It's very, very difficult if you don't have people who can speak up for you, people who can advise you and give you honest coaching and mentoring, and people that can guide you into your next opportunity. And lastly, speak up for yourself. You're a leader. You may not feel it right now today, but as you do these things I've talked about, as you practice principle 1 and 2 and 3, you'll be able to speak up more. Brag on yourself a little bit. Certainly for me, I've had to learn to speak up and sell myself just a little bit more than I would be comfortable with. And again, that sign of discomfort is probably a good thing. It tells us that we're competing. It tells us that we're showing up where we need to be to create those opportunities for ourselves. Well, it wouldn't be a talk on technology and on careers at this point, September 2025, without a few words on AI. So AI is absolutely reshaping job roles. In my company and in my role, I'm actually responsible now I'm part of the committee that runs the AI governance for the whole company. So we are grappling with some of these big questions about how to leverage AI within our organization, in our products, and for our customer experiences, and dealing with the ethical risks and regulations that come with AI. AI is reshaping job roles. So we know routine tasks are increasingly becoming automated. Coding, reporting, documentation, and many other things that we sort of knowledge workers have been doing with our days for the last few decades, increasingly becoming automated now. When we look at hiring, it favors adaptability. Recruiters are looking for candidates who can work alongside AI and not for skill sets and approaches that can be simply replaced by it. Coming back to communication, communication is now a key differentiator. I would argue probably even more now, because AI can handle the technical grunt work. It can do the basic jobs. Clear communication with nuance of emotional intelligence and responsiveness, that's what sets humans apart from the machines. Soft skills matter more today than ever. So empathy, storytelling, and the ability to explain complex AI-driven insights to non-technical audiences. These are things that AI cannot do well. Maybe in a few years from now, it's obviously going to get better. But take advantage and celebrate your humanity and your abilities as a human at this point in time. So I would say career resilience at this point, again, trying to get hired, trying to survive, trying to do better in your career, is really about human and AI collaboration with communication skills. People who combine their domain expertise in whatever area with AI-assisted productivity and strong communication skills, these are best positioned for long-term relevance and for upward mobility within their careers. The last thing I'll say about AI in respect to communication is that it's a tricky subject because it's evolving so rapidly. As I said earlier, I joined a tech company back at the end of the 90s, turning into the early 2000s, That was the burgeoning internet era, the dot-com era. And that technology felt very rapid. The internet felt like it was rolling out very rapidly. Suddenly everybody's emailing and building websites, and as consumers, we start to buy things online and so forth. That felt very, very rapid. But think about how quickly AI is developing and how capable it's becoming on this incredibly accelerated pace. And most experts predict that things will only ramp exponentially over the next year to 5 years. So it's hard to distill all of this because it's kind of a moving target, but we cannot avoid maybe the elephant in the room, which is AI. AI will replace many traditional roles, but you have an advantage here if you go back to my 3 principles and if you develop strong communication skills. I shared a lot of information. I will say, by the way, the principles and a lot of the information I shared is not all developed and authored by me. I've really pulled on the best of what I could find in terms of research, literature that's out there, and resources. So I've really gathered together the wisdom of many, many people over many years and tried to put it together here. And I hope you find that helpful. I want to wrap up by summarizing everything I've talked about into these few things. So first of all, my 3 principles. 1, to speak clearly. First, think clearly. Secondly, your character is a balance between being warm and strong. And third, never let humility beat your ability. I've given you those practical steps. You might ask, well, how many times do I need to do the practical steps? How many books do I need to read? How many hours, etc.? The answer is, of course, it depends on you, how much time you have. I'm very busy in my job and in my family life and with other commitments in the community. So I never get as much time as I would like. But I think if at least on a weekly basis, you can do 10 pages of a book, do a little bit of writing about it, even that, you'll start to see some results there. If you can do more, wonderful, of course. And as I said, on AI again, generative AI, let's be clear, is still a long way from achieving real human level emotional intelligence and true natural language communication. So again, celebrate being human and take advantage of that from your career point of view. That's everything I wanted to share. I would love to connect with any of you offline if you're interested. I have my email address here and my LinkedIn. I'm completely open to that. I want to wrap everything by thanking everybody tonight for listening in. I hope you got value from this. I truly wish you all great success in your careers. I hope you do well, and I hope you can learn from some of the missteps and some of the successes that I've had in my own career. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Dean. Wow, that was an incredible sharing. Really, really compelling. Actually, a couple takeaways for me is the importance of communication in the age of AI. I never really thought about that. That's very, very compelling. Also, as an Asian American, the point that you made about visibility, and that really hits close to home, as I'm sure it does for many of you here as well. So let's keep the conversation going. Whenever we learn something new, questions naturally arise, right? So luckily, we've set aside some time for Q&A. So this is the perfect time for you to bring your questions forward and to practice a little communication as well, right? So if you have any questions, please hit the react button and then raise your hand, and be more than happy to call on you and have you ask your question. While we wait for, actually, I have one from Star.
Thank you so much, Dean. Thank you, John.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I would love to hear a story when you have to brag yourself either with your peers or promotion, performance review. How was it?
Yeah, thank you, Star. It's never easy, and I think it depends a little bit on personality and culture, of course. Interestingly, I was practicing my speech and my content with my wife earlier on. So again, we're both from the UK, and when I mentioned this point, I said, "Oh, I'm gonna tell everybody, brag on yourself a little bit." She said, "But you're mainly talking to Americans. Americans don't have an issue with bragging on themselves." So, for my American friends, I hope you take that well, but again, culture can play a part in this. For me, especially in the beginning, felt pretty uncomfortable. I remember one situation where I'd been a project manager, delivered some really, really tough deliverables on a project, and had a senior manager towards the end of the project come in and basically do thank everybody for all the work done. And I did not get called out. So even though I was the project manager, he called on a couple of the sort of work stream leads and a couple of other managers, peers of mine, and said, amazing work these guys did, because he had seen it himself a lot closer. I remember that moment as a moment. I'm standing there kind of sweating, nervous, and I thought to myself, I need to say something. So I just butted in and I just said, "Hey, I also did some work here." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sorry, I meant to." So I think there are sometimes, even when it's awkward, you just need to put your hand up. You just need to say, "Hey, don't forget me. If you've done the work and you deserve it, you have every right to do that." So I think those uncomfortable moments. Now, from that, what do you learn is that don't get into that situation in the first place. Don't be so, again, modest, and don't be so humble all the way through a project that at the end of it, when somebody's thanking everybody, you're not even considered. Make sure at key points through the project that it's clear if you did the work or if you led the work with your team, people know about that. Don't be ashamed of that. I think that's the most important message, because it pays off. People see that, opportunities come up later, and they remember, they connect you with that work that was done. If you're too far back in the shadows, that's never going to happen. Thank you, Star, for the question.
Thank
I have
you.
a follow-up to that question myself. What's your favorite way of making sure that you are kind of leaving those, those little touch points or those breadcrumbs so that you are recognized without being too overbearing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great way of thinking about it. Yeah. And that's the thing that we tend to be afraid of. I'm going to be overbearing. I'm going to be kind of a nuisance here. I'm going to look like I'm trying to make it all about me. That's the voice that we need to work against a little bit, because that's the one that keeps us quiet, right? One of the things that I've done in my role is thought, okay, there's only so many opportunities you get to be in the spotlight in meetings or on calls or whatever it might be. So why don't we sum up everything we're doing? And I say this to my team all the time. Look, doing great work is awesome. It's great for our customers. It's great for the business. We also, the third element there, though, is your career. So why don't we put together a weekly or a monthly newsletter and email, just some key highlights of things that we've worked on, and just send it around the organization, small things like that, so that if somebody opens it up, again, a manager or somebody from another group, they see that and they see what the team's been working on and things are highlighted. They may miss it otherwise because there's so much going on all the time. So I think sometimes you have to create your own communication channel. And again, an email or a newsletter, something like that. Also, just one-on-one calls. I've found that sometimes I find my own team not speaking up or not getting the recognition. So I'll just do a quick 2-minute, 5-minute one-on-one call with somebody I think is important in the organization, just to say, "Hey, you know what? My team did a lot of work here," or, "Joe or Susan did a lot of work here. I just wanted you to know that." And usually people are surprised by that because they haven't seen it. But when they hear it, they're like, "Okay, that's cool. And I didn't realize that, but I've got it now." So I think, again, create your own communication channels with a newsletter, something like that. But also, don't be afraid to ping people and just set the record straight, or just make sure they know who really did the work.
Well, that's really good. Anybody have any questions? If not, I have more, but I don't want to hog all the time. Here, I'll shoot another one at you. You mentioned kind of shifting gears a little bit because a lot of this communication is more as kind of a subordinate or maybe subordinate to your superior, right? But looking down instead, people that maybe we're either laterally working with or downward people that work for us. You mentioned being a happy warrior. Can you expand on that? That's
Yeah. It's another one, John, that I think it's something that I strive for. I'm not sure I always get it right, and it's one of those that harder to define. But when you see it, when I see it in others, I'm like, okay, that's a happy warrior. So what do I mean by it? Warrior in the sense of, at the end of the day, you're in an organization to create value. You have to deliver on your goals. You have to, and as you climb the ranks as well, the expectation on you just grows. Of course, you have to deliver bigger results. You have to transform things. When you start in your career, you're doing a job, you're doing a task, and as you grow in your career, the expectation is that you don't just do things, you change things. You overhaul, you simplify, you radically improve things. So it gets more and more challenging. I think the warrior part is acknowledging that you have to go after those goals. You have to be relentless. You are not going to survive in tough environments like the technology industry unless you are able to be relentless, to be driven, and to have a very strong track record of accomplishment. That's just a given. That's the table stakes. The happy warrior bit comes in, again, back to warmth and strength, okay, that balance. If you're only feared, if you're just a warrior, if all you do is fight, if all you are is aggressive and demanding, I guarantee you people will not respond as well as if you get that balance of warmth and strength. So the happy part is the ability to be a little bit human, is to be able to smile, is to be a little bit vulnerable, admit your mistakes. I can remember one of the biggest things that happened to me as a new manager. I mentioned before, I was kind of a dictator. It's embarrassing now to think about that, but I was this kind of caricature of a leader, tough guy, that kind of thing. And it's funny to think about it now. It wasn't good for my team at the time, and I was very unhappy. But one of the things that changed was I started to admit when I made mistakes. Those really strong, again, warrior characters would never admit any mistakes. They're always right, and they push down on people, right? They punch down on people. The happy warrior for me is someone who is fighting and is getting things done and is in the trenches, but is also, and I remember this myself, not afraid to say to people, you know what, I made a mistake there, I'm sorry. Or I did something wrong, or I shouldn't have said it that way. Again, one-on-one, letting people know that you have a human side as well. I think we can tend to think of leaders up there on a pedestal as being invincible and somehow different to everybody else. Reality is, of course, we're all human. We have the same fears, needs, desires, things driving us. And so being a little bit vulnerable, admitting mistakes, showing some of your flaws, I think can help you be the happy warrior, a human side to what is a very strong and driven personality that you want to show up with as well. Okay, I hope it helps.
That's really helpful. Yeah, I mean, I don't normally think about admitting our faults, especially when you're in a leadership role, right? Admitting your faults is an important area of communication because it does kind of show vulnerability and allow other people to be vulnerable as well. Wow.
Exactly. Yeah,
It's
well said.
incredible.
Well said.
That's really, really incredible. Do we have, all right, we have, I'm not going to pronounce that right. Xiong, go ahead and ask your question.
Please.
Yeah.
It's Xiong. Yeah, okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, my camera is not working. Yeah, first of all, great presentation. So many insights. Really appreciate you generously share all your insights. So my question is, when you were a manager, to lead all the technique, those experts, while you didn't have the enough knowledge in that field. And in that environment, how could you be confident your direct reports, people were doing the right thing to get the work done, right? Because you don't have the knowledge to check and, you know, yeah. So I just curious how you overcome that obstacle.
Thanks for
Thank
the
you.
question. Absolutely. Well, you have to take a different approach, for sure. If you understand the work people are doing, or perhaps you did the work, let's say that you're in marketing, and then one day you get promoted, you're the marketing team manager. Of course, you manage differently because you know, to your point, exactly what things need to look like to be right, and you know how long things take, and so on. When you take over a team of people who are doing completely different work to the things that you're used to, you have to, I think, come back to first principles of management. So not understanding the detail of what's being done, but understanding the output that's expected. Again, you won't have that, so you need to do a lot more research. It's interesting, I was talking about principle 1, about how to speak clearer, reading a lot more. I can tell you, when I took over that engineering team, once I had been able to take a breath and realize I would get through this, I did a ton of reading and research. Of course, not to become an expert. No, I'm not going to become an engineer overnight, but I did everything I could to learn as much as I could. The other thing is finding other people. You need, in that situation, you need a support network. So I was running this team of engineers, not an engineer myself, but did I know others, again, back to the network, did I know other people that had engineering backgrounds that I could just sit with and say, I'm having a one-on-one with somebody in my team and they're telling me this, it doesn't feel right. What am I missing? What kind of questions do I need to ask? And they can help you because they know the language, they know principles of engineering and so forth. So I think obviously learning as much as you can, managing more based on expected outputs, but with support from somebody who knows what to look for. And then I think being very clear with your team, but back to vulnerability, that's a great opportunity to say to the team, listen, day one, you guys know this, I'm not an engineer. You all are. You are the experts. I, as a leader, I'm here to support and enable you to be the best engineers you can possibly be. One thing we have in common is we treat our customers like royalty, right? They are our number one priority. You all have the engineering expertise. I can remove roadblocks for you. I can support you. I can enable you. I expect you to do the right things, and I'm going to learn as we go along. But be a little bit vulnerable. Be honest about it, and people will respect you more for it. It was the 2 years that I ran that engineering team were so challenging, but I learned so much. And there were two years in my whole career where I think I've learned more than at any other time because it forced me to step up in a really big way. So thank
Yeah.
you for the question.
Thank you so much. So maybe just a follow-up question, right? When it comes to like set up the timeline, since you don't really know how much the work it's going to take, do you just let your direct reports tell you, okay, it's going to take 3 months or 6 months, right? How do you check the reasonability? Is it like you go bounce to maybe your support in the network to seek their input, or you let your direct reports to peer review their own work? What kind of a systematic approach you have taken?
Yeah, a little bit of everything that you just said for sure. I think that back to communication skills, even though you might not know exactly what people are working on or how they're doing it and the technical skills there, as you get better at communication, I talked mainly here about how you get to be a better speaker, how you can write better. But of course, the other side of good communication is listening. And as you do the things I've talked about with the 3 principles, as you, particularly that warmth side of your style, you learn to empathize well with people, and you also learn to pick up subtle cues. So what I mean by that is let's say that in that situation, the engineering team, we're sitting together and I say, hey, what's a realistic time frame? And somebody would say, okay, we need 8 months to deliver that. Now, I have no idea if the thing they're building is really going to take 8 months. But what I do know and what I do have confidence in is my ability to pick up on subtle cues. I obviously don't mean that people would be deceptive, but is there a gut feeling that when they say 8 months, do I need to follow up on that? To your point, do I need to go ask somebody else that knows better? Do I need to just say, guys, 8 months doesn't feel right. Explain to me, break it down for me better. That team had to learn to be pretty patient with me, and I'm sure, I frustrated them at times. But that's one of the reasons, back to Happy Warrior, I was maybe a little happier, if you like, there, because I couldn't give them the technical support. I couldn't advise them how to do better CAD design or whatever it was, because I just didn't have that skill set. But I could listen to them even more and say, hey, what's blocking you right now? So if somebody gave me a timeline, if I accepted it, okay, fine. If I felt uneasy about it, I'd either get a second opinion, or I'd just very transparently say, I don't understand this. Break it down for me better and tell me what you need, what needs to be true to make that 8 months, 6 months, or 4 months, or whatever it might be. And by doing that, showing that, okay, I'm not trying to disagree or challenge you because I don't have that authority to do that. I don't know, but I need you to help me. I think turning it that way, it creates a better engagement. And over time, again, you start to get a better sense. And by the end of that 2 years, when they came to me with timelines that, whatever they might be, I had my antenna was tuned a lot better to know if they were really pushing themselves or if they were trying to be, comfortable.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm hoping in the AI stage, AI age, now we have more access to the information. Maybe you can ask AI.
I wish I'd had ChatGPT back then. Believe me. I mean, going to the library and reading books. Now, yeah, of course, you could just use ChatGPT for most of that. So it's very different.
Yep. Yeah. Thank you so much again.
Thanks for the questions.
Let's see if we have a few more minutes, so let's see if we have anyone else. Okay, we have
Another
KK.
question. I'd like to follow up on the mentoring and coaching you are recommending, Dean. Could you give us some examples of how you really use the mentor and the coaches to improve your communication?
Thanks,
Thanks.
Doug. I definitely found, for me, there were two types of coaches. Ones which were a great conversation and fun, and then the other ones, the ones that I really learned from, if I'm being honest. So I found in the beginning of my career in particular, we had a coaching program where a coach would be assigned to you. And again, nice conversation, they would share things, their experience, their advice, but you never really felt like you were being stretched. The first time I found that mentor that said, hey, or in fact, it was a manager and a mentor said, you're not cut out for sales. Forget it. Very, very harsh. And I walked away. I was pretty young at the time. And I walked away angry and very upset and almost in denial. And of course, the reality was he was completely right. How can you be a great salesperson if you stumble and stammer and struggle to speak in front of people? It's never going to work. You have to address it. And you could say it took me 22 years to really take that advice before I went back. I was confident enough to go back to sales and to pitch to customers and things, but actually got me quickly on that path. I'm a pretty competitive person by nature. So realizing I wasn't good at something that didn't sit well with me. And I was determined to figure out, okay, why am I not good at that? Other people are good at it. What are they doing differently to me? What's going on? That curiosity really got me pushing. But the mentor was the one that triggered it. I think I probably would have floundered for another couple of years if they'd let me. if they hadn't stopped me and said, we need to do something differently here. I've had another mentor as well who's also pretty challenging, and will provoke me to think about things from a different angle. He's great at saying, okay, what are you working on that you're proud of? What's going well? And whatever I'll say, this project's going, really good. This part of the business is doing well, and he'll always say to me, okay, but when you say good, what do you mean by good? Is it good enough? I mean, he's one of those people that's just incredibly ambitious and pushy, and that's actually needed. The conversations I have with him are actually, I don't necessarily look forward to them. When I know they're coming up, I think, oh, I got to have that conversation. And he's always like, are you sure? Is it really as good as you think? And why are you trusting that person? And did you really do enough here? But after the calls I have with him, there's always a nugget there. Always. I walk away and I realize, okay, I haven't been critical enough of myself or others, or whatever the results are. And I think finding those people, I've found that they tend to be, kind of the slightly prickly people, the ones that are a little bit more abrasive. They're the ones that are just going to tell you straight. The ones where you have a great chemistry and, hey, we could, we're great friends, we can have coffee together. Not necessarily the best mentor, at least not for me. I need to hear it pretty direct and pretty blunt. And then it hits me and I realize I need to go do something different. So I think just seeking out, you see somebody in a meeting or you bump into somebody and, ooh, that guy's pretty blunt, that is pretty rough around the edges. Those are the mentors that I really like. Again, if you really want to grow, if you really want to be challenged, those are the kinds of people I recommend.
Great. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Good question.
We have a KK. Let me
Hi,
ask you.
KK.
There we go.
Hi, this is KK. Hi. Hi. Thank you for your presentation and thank you for this really, really helpful. And I have two quick questions, but they're somewhat related. So the first question is, how do you transform from naturally introverted to extroverted?
Yeah.
Do you have a practical recommendations? Right? And then the second question is also related to this. Do people usually get promoted to from engineer background to managers?
Person.
Yeah, because they're more extroverted besides the technical skill.
Absolutely. Thank you, KK. So the transition, as you said, from introvert. Listen, first of all, I don't think it's possible to rewire yourself. I don't think it's even a good thing to try to change your personality. I am, and I forever will be, basically an introvert. However, I do believe, and I have seen in my own career, in my own life, is it possible to operate successfully in an environment with other extroverts, or in a role where you need to be forward and very confident, even though you're an introvert? And the answer is absolutely you can. How do you do that? I think you start by what I just said. Don't say, I'm an introvert and that's wrong. I need to be bold and brash. And again, that you might try that. It's going to make you really miserable for a short time, and people are going to see through that very quickly. So the first thing is to say, I need to work on my confidence, my ability to speak up, and I need to be able to be more comfortable in my own skin as an introvert. How can I be with other people? How can I make connections and engage with other people as an introvert, but in an environment where I need to show up, confidently? So it's acknowledging, first of all. Again, don't aim to be an ultra extrovert. What I did, I started to take every opportunity I could to speak or to be involved in something, even though inside I didn't want to do it. And the classic example of this for me was social things around work. So again, back when I started 25 years ago, I was in sales, I was young, and there was absolutely a huge culture of social functions and things after work. Okay, so going for drinks, going for dinner, with customers, with colleagues, it was really huge. And as an introvert, as a shy person, as soon as work finished, I wanted to go home. I wanted to go home to be with my girlfriend at the time, or to be with my cat, or whatever it was, just not me. But I again realized I would never build a network. I would never get any opportunity, and I wanted to progress. So I started to say yes to things when I would normally say no. Hey, you want to go for a drink? You want to meet up? You want to do something inside? No, no, no. I started to say yes, even though I felt uncomfortable, even though it wasn't what I wanted to do. And of course, like anything that you do that's difficult, the more often you do it and the more you realize that it doesn't kill you, it starts to make you stronger. You start to get a little bit more comfortable with it. I read a great book, by the way. I've talked about a few different books. Never Eat Alone. Fantastic book. It talks, and there's a whole chapter in there for people that are shy or introverted by character. How do you engage people? How do you build a network of people around you, even though you're an introvert? So I really recommend that book. And then your other question is a great one that, of course, we talk about all the time in my company, which is, the sort of two career paths, the sort of business, people leader side, and then the technical and an engineer. And the big dilemma has always been, as an engineer or a technical person, at a certain point, you run out of opportunities. You hit this ceiling where, okay, if you're now going to be promoted to become a senior manager and a director and a VP and all the rest of it, technical people never seem to get there. I think things have changed over time. So now I do work my peer group at my level. I do, there's a mix of people from marketing, sales, engineering background. So I think things have opened up a little bit, but certainly the sort of classic image of the nerdy introvert engineer, is it harder to progress through an organization? Yes. Yeah, it certainly is, to be honest. And I think in these competitive, aggressive type organizations, it's not easy for everybody. Yeah, it's not easy for everybody. I think trying to carve out your own path, that can definitely be on the technical side. If you want to progress and get to the next level, there are fewer opportunities, but I know a couple of exceptionally skilled technical people who've gone to pretty high levels in the company. Again, not as easy as if you're a manager or just a general business leader. Not as many opportunities. I think with AI, back to that, I think things will balance even more in the next few years in terms of the technical skill set of being able to code, of being an engineer, like it or not, will become less and less relevant, and the ability to work with AI and with automation technology, that becomes what makes you stand out, again, with communication skills. So I think the playing field will level out, to your question. But yeah, right now, definitely tricky for the technical people and for the more introverted people. It's another challenge on top of everything else.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for the question.
Oh, that's fantastic. And thank you for all the wonderful sharing. This is very, very valuable. Yeah, especially I feel like, and not to highlight again the Asian American community, but this is it's a challenge for us, especially, and we're not the typical Americans, as you might say, and as well as some of us are might be joining internationally, so that would also fall under that category of not being American there, or not the typical American. So as let's see. So yeah, as we progress through tonight, so thank you again for all your participation. What a wonderful discussion. I'm sure many of you still have some questions. Maybe a few are a little shy. So I encourage you to bring your questions to our breakout rooms where you can not only practice communicating, but also interface with each other and our very experienced professional mentors. But before we open the breakout rooms, I have a few important announcements. So first, we have regularly scheduled, highly valuable events like the one that you're attending today. So scan the QR code on the left to find out more about those. Now, additionally, we have the more established EMBA program. You may have heard this term thrown around a couple times. EMBA is comprised of mentor-mentee circles and helps with personal and professional growth across business, ministry, and even family life. Experienced mentors provide guidance through monthly teaching, small group sharings, and one-on-one engagement. You'll be paired with a mentor to help you break through limitations and thrive in your journey. So scan the QR code on the, oh, actually, there's no QR code on the right side. I'm sorry, I thought there was. But yeah, you can find out more about that by inquiring with us. Next, so actually our next event is on Saturday, October 25th, and the topic is in line with the current topic and kind of expands upon it. We'll center around being able to communicate effectively when English is your second language. So scan the QR code here to learn more about that. Let's see, the next EMBA, the 2025 EMBA graduation program graduation is on November 8th from 4 to 6 p.m. Pacific or 7 to 9 p.m. EST. Now, this is a hybrid event, which means that we're going to be celebrating at our physical location here in San Jose, as well as on Zoom. So we'll have a few keynotes, some personal sharings from mentees, awards raffles, and a fun social mixer as well. Another great opportunity to practice communication there. Refreshments will be provided for those of you who are able to attend in person. Next slide. So do you like what you experienced today, but maybe you're not sure exactly how to get started? Well, you can join the @Cloud family by joining one of the chat groups. Or you can receive updates via our mailing list. You'll see the QR codes here that you can scan, and you can access prior recordings from prior events with the QR code on the right. You can check us out on YouTube as well. Next, now @Cloud is a nonprofit Christian-based ministry. Everything you see here is a result of people giving their time, effort, and expertise. But as you know, things like buildings, Zoom accounts, and technology cost money. So I'd like to invite you to also partner with us in supporting @Cloud financially. Your donations help us to build our infrastructure, reach more people, and support venue rentals. And all of these make this ministry possible. Our amazing volunteers work hard to create a meaningful impact in the global marketplace, and your generosity plays a very vital role in this mission. There are 3 ways to give: check, PayPal, and Zelle. So go ahead and take a screenshot and you can do it in your own time. We'll also have a link at the end, I think after the breakout rooms. So thank you again for your support and generosity. So without further ado, let's introduce the way that we're going to be doing the breakout room. So we're going to be doing it EMBA style here, where EMBA, again, the program will centers around really four major categories there. First is the E-Circle, stands for Entrepreneurship and Life Circle. So whether you're launching a startup, scaling your business, or seeking personal growth, the E-Circle is your gateway to new opportunities. The M-Circle, which is our own portmanteau, or blend word as they call it, stands for Melic and Preneur Circle. Melic means kingship, and Preneur comes from entrepreneurship. And this circle is designed for visionaries, leaders, and marketplace influencers that are ready to step into a divine calling. Next is the B Circle, and this stands for business, and career advancement. This circle is designed for professionals, entrepreneurs, and leaders to gain tools, insights, and network necessary for breakthrough success. It will help to accelerate your career growth and biblical tactics, gain business insights to scale and succeed, as well as connect with a powerful network of like-minded professionals. And the A Circle stands for Apostolic Leadership. This circle is designed for those who are ready to influence, build, and transform in their God-given spheres. So the way that this is going to go is each Each person is going to be allowed a minute or two to self-introduce, your name, location, ministry, etc. A couple takeaways from the keynote. You're encouraged to share there, and how the @Cloud community can help to support your career or ministry as well. So after the closing prayer, we're going to go ahead and open up the breakout room. So please stay with us for this part of the program, where you're going to have a chance to dive deeper into these topics and practice, of course, as well as share your thoughts, or just continue learning from our mentors as well as your fellow mentees. All right, we'll see you in the breakout rooms after the closing prayer. Michael, do you mind doing the honors?
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you so much, Dean, for this wonderful workshop. Really appreciate it. I learned a lot from you today. Okay, let's do the closing prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you for being with us throughout this workshop. And we are so grateful for wisdom and principles shared by our speaker, Dean. May the lesson we have learned today strengthen us in our career journeys and enrich our daily lives. And as we go forth, may your presence continue to be with us, blessing us and guiding each step we take. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you,
Amen.
Michael.